The first time I saw Madness, I was fascinated. It has an incredibly powerful effect, but because it destroys random jokers, it's impossible to build around it reliably. For a while, it lived in the back of my mind as this curious concept that could never see practical use. Until I moved up to the Black Stake. The Black Stake modifier makes some jokers eternal, meaning that you can't sell or destroy them after you buy them. In most circumstances, this is a big downside because you can't swap out the joker later in the game. I've lost many runs because I bought a powerful eternal joker early that didn't scale into the late game, but eternal has one minor niche upside. Eternal jokers can't be destroyed by Madness. So, what happens if you're playing on Black Stake or higher, and you have multiple key jokers with eternal on them, and you see Madness in the shop? Well, let's find out together. First things first, I am playing on the Plasma deck at Purple Stake. What's cool about the Plasma deck is that early game 5-card hands will generally 1 or 2 shot every single fight, up until maybe like mid ante 2, which means that you can be very conservative with your buying decisions and accrue a lot of money. Normally this doesn't work at the higher stakes because you need to invest pretty heavily to keep up in value, but Plasma deck probably has the smoothest early game of any deck at Gold Stake. And in the second shop, I see a Burnt Joker, which is one of my favorite cards. With Burnt Joker, you can accumulate levels for a certain hand really quickly. The downside though is that it kind of locks you into playing pair or high card because those are the only hands that you can discard for your first discard really consistently. That being said, I love playing pair and high card, so I love playing with Burnt Joker. Ordinarily, I would try to make a high card strategy work, especially since I see Burnt Joker so early, but because I'm playing the Plasma deck specifically, I know that I'm going to need basically every chip that I can get because those chips are going to be converted into mults later on. So I decide to use Burnt Joker to level up pairs as much as possible instead, because pairs will scale more quickly with chip values, and they're still very reliable to hit. In this pack, I have a really interesting decision between Banner and Odd Todd. Both of them are really good early game jokers for the Plasma deck because they give plus chips, and again, chips convert into mults or vice versa depending on which is higher. In most circumstances, Banner would be better, however because I have Burnt Joker, I'm going to be using those discards really quickly, so I think in this case, Odd Todd wins by a small margin. Honestly, I sincerely consider taking Banner regardless, because plus 40 chips on every hand is arguably a little better than plus 60 chips on some hands, but I decided that hitting odd pairs was reliable enough that I was willing to pass on Banner. So now with the bonus chips, I'm scoring 3,000 chips per hand, and I'm able to breeze through the next couple of hands because again, I'm playing the Plasma deck, which has a really strong early game. I do think that Plasma tends to struggle towards the late game, especially at higher stakes, because the values you need to win grow so goddamn fast, and it's really hard to keep up. Plus, if you buy a lot of chips early on, and that's where your value is coming from, you kind of get locked into a chip strategy that doesn't really accumulate in value multiplicatively, so I'm still kind of working on this balancing act of trying to get multiplicative effects to scale, but also have enough chips to actually keep up in value. It's difficult. This deck's a lot harder than I think people realize. I buy Overstock here, even though it brings my money down pretty low, because over time, seeing an extra joker in the shop is going to be extremely valuable, worth $10 early game for sure, because the more jokers that I see, the more likely it'll be that I see a good one, and I will buy it, and I'll be happy. My pairs are now level 5, which means that of my hand options, pairs are actually worth the most at this point, so I can pivot into playing mostly pairs as opposed to mixing in flushes and full houses, and the Rube Goldberg machine is in motion. We just gotta hope it works. It's worth noting here that skipping is much less valuable for me than usual because skipping means that I will not get any value out of Burnt Joker. So in addition to the usual consideration of how much a shop is worth and how much a little bit of extra money is worth, you also have to ask yourself how much is a pair level worth. And actually at this point in the game, pair levels are worth kind of a lot, so it would take something really good for me to choose to skip a blind. Castle is a fascinating choice here. Anything that lets you scale in chips tends to be good on the Plasma deck. However, Castle is kind of awkward to use when you only have 2 discards at the higher stakes, and I'm also trying to leverage my discards with Burnt Joker, so doing both at the same time would be kind of difficult. I do crack open a jumbo pack, and in it I see 2 foiled cards. Foiled cards again are plus chips, which is really good in Plasma deck, and between Seance and Shoot the Moon, I go with Shoot the Moon, even though Seance is rare, because on the off chance that I'm holding a queen, I do get a little bit of extra mults, and I think there's actually a 0% chance that I'm ever playing a straight flush at any point during this run. Although now that I think about it, because Seance is rare, it does mean it's going to be worth more money when I do decide to sell it, but like $3 by the late game is not really worth that much. I think my decision's fine. It's okay. Here I see Banner for the second time, and I'm still strongly considering taking it because plus 40 chips is not a bad result, and when I do sell Burnt Joker, Banner goes up to 80 chips, which is not bad, but I pass on it again because I don't really need immediate value to carry me over the finish line, and by the time of the late game, I would probably want something higher value than Banner in that slot, so there's not really a good home for it in this build, even though I really like the card. And thanks to that Burnt Joker scaling, I am more or less keeping pace with the blinds. That will change by the late game, but for now we're not struggling too much, so I'm pleased. And here is the first time I see Madness in the shop. I think about this for a long time, because at this point in my life, I'm aware that Madness can combo with Eternal Jokers, and at the high stakes, that can more or less win you the run single-handedly. So even though none of my Jokers are Eternal right now, what I could do is buy it here, let it grow, and just try to scrape by until I see some high-value Eternal Jokers in the shop, then pick those up and be guaranteed to win the run. I end up deciding against this play because there's a pretty high chance that Madness will torch some essential part of my build, like Burnt Joker or Odd Todd right away, and then I'll just lose immediately. But I thought really hard about that decision. I also saw Banner for the third time in that pack, which is really funny. Although I do take Cloud9 instead, it's not actually that great of a card for me, but I opened the pack so I might as well grab something. And here, I sell Square Joker for Supernova, which now that I'm looking at it is actually insane. I don't know why I did that. I really should have sold Cloud9. I think I might have actually misclicked there, because Square Joker grows by 4 every hand you play, whereas Supernova only grows by 1, and there's no distinction between chips and molt because it's plasma deck. So I don't know what the hell I was thinking when I did that. I mean, I won the run, so, you know, can't complain too much, but that's crazy. Past me, I don't know what you're doing. So at Ante 5, I get a very lucky pickup, which is a Campfire with holographic on it. Campfire is easily one of the strongest jokers in the game, not just because it has a really high peak value if you buy and sell a lot of cards, but also Campfire means that you can convert gold into molts really easily and smoothly, and you can buy and sell more or fewer cards based on how the run is going and what you need to get through the next ante. You can think of it as like tapping the gas pedal here and there, so you don't use up all of your fuel right away, but getting a little boost to get over the hump if you need it. And I do this a lot during this run. I'm thinking really hard about whether or not I can take the next fight and win, and if I can't, then I'll do some buying and selling just for that little bit of extra value. Here I see Banner for the 4th time. Hello again, my friend. And after a few more uneventful fights, I finally remember that I should hold consumables in my inventory to feed to Campfire, and I also pick up a negative Eternal Scary Face. This is mostly just because I have a little bit of extra money and I can afford it. Because of the negative, I'm not going to lose any Joker slots, so I'm pretty happy to pick it up if I have the spare cash, and +4 or +8 molt here or there could push me over the edge in a tough fight. Again, plasma deck at high stakes, you need every microscopic edge that you can get. The fact that it's Eternal is also relevant for reasons that you will see in the very near future. That's called foreshadowing. Look it up. I haven't quite internalized that the face cards are also giving me plus chits at this point, so I'm fake discarding them to try to get more odd cards. I do correct this after a couple of hands, but it's very easy to get locked into a certain mindset when you've had certain jokers for a while. Try not to do that. Try to adapt. Unlike me. Be smarter than me. I swap out consumables here, spending a little bit of money in the process, because again, each time I do this, my Campfire grows a little bit, and we're starting to reach the stage of the game where it's really hard to keep up in value, so I'm tapping on the gas pedal a little bit here just to make sure I get over the hump. And now, here's the moment you've been waiting for. I see an Eternal Madness a second time, only this time I have a bunch of jokers in my inventory that are really powerful Eternal cards. Between Supernova, Campfire, and Madness, my molt value is able to grow extremely high, and even though I wouldn't be happy about losing my chip cards and especially my Burnt Joker, Madness is such a powerful effect with this many rounds to go that I do the calculation and I believe that it's going to be worth it to pick up here. The next few rounds after I've bought Madness are going to be extremely delicate because I'm losing so much value after random jokers get deleted, so I'm willing to buy and spend a little bit more with Campfire to make sure I get over the finish line. This is a really weird and lucky but also technical set of jokers to have. It's great to have the flexibility with Campfire to buy and sell and bump up my molt, and it's also really lucky that I just happened to see so many Eternal Jokers, which soft combo with Madness. But if you're gonna play something like this, you have to be very careful about doing the math in your head for what your output of chits can be. If your estimates are even a little bit under, you'll lose the run immediately, but if you spend everything immediately, you won't have enough juice to get through the next few antes. I'm opening packs in the hopes of seeing another powerful Eternal Joker. However, what I realized after recording this run is that Eternal actually only applies to jokers that are in the shop, so I'm kind of spending money for no reason. I do go through quite a bit of buying and selling here. Even though I haven't taken a fight yet, I know I'm going to need a lot of value to get through the next few rounds, and my money is pretty high, so I'm willing to spend down a little bit in order to make sure I survive the small blind, at which point I'll know more precisely what my values are, and I can adjust a little bit from there. That being said, I might have overcorrected slightly because I did just one-shot the small blind, but I still have $30 in the bank, so, you know, it's fine. So now, a few rounds later, Madness has had time to grow, and it's a huge value generator for me. And I do really want to buy Blueprint here, but because it's not Eternal, Madness is basically guaranteed to torch it right away. And this is the downside of this kind of strategy. Once you've locked in Madness and your 3 or 4 Eternal Jokers, you cannot buy anything else. You just have to hope that what you already have is going to take you over the finish line. It is painful to skip Blueprint, but it is the correct play in this position. Minor side note, High Priestess is nice to hold going into the last ante because essentially it gives me 3 consumables in my inventory instead of 2. And after scoring 600,000 chips on the wall, I feel very comfortable going into ante 8. Pretty sure I'm going to win. And now, please enjoy this fast-forwarded footage of me buying and selling a whole bunch of cards. Many minutes of buying and selling later, now scoring 1.1 million per hand, which is maybe a bit of overkill. And I don't interact with this shop because I know I'll have one more shop for me to do my business. And this way I get a full $5 of interest. And after a crazy amount of buying and selling, I managed to one-shot the Emperor Acorn with another 1.1 million in one hand. I do realize immediately after I've won though that because I spent all of my money, I am not going to make it very far in endless mode, but that's okay. I don't really play for endless mode. So, Madness sucks most of the time. Because it destroys random jokers, any like scaling that you've accumulated, any nice chips that you've accumulated, they all just go bye-bye as soon as you see Madness. And even though the effect is extremely powerful, I think there's basically no way for you to use it with any real effectiveness unless you are past Blackstake and you're able to see a whole bunch of Eternal Jokers that are high value. Is it unlikely? Yes, incredibly so. But if you're playing the high stakes and you're struggling like I am, and you happen to have some good Eternal cards, and you happen to see Madness, now you know there's this neat trick that you can do. Thanks so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you want to see more. And also leave a comment with more video ideas. I read all of them, so be nice.